Welcome, dear listener, to the Sleepy Oceanographer, a quiet journey beneath the waves where science meets serenity. Tonight, we're descending into the deep, dark ocean to explore a curious mystery. How do fish survive the crushing pressure of the deep sea? Before we begin, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching or listening from? Let me know in the comments below. Whether you're by the sea, in the mountains, or tucked into bed, I'm so glad you're here. Now take a deep breath, and let's dive in. Imagine, if you will, the surface of the ocean at twilight. The last golden rays of the sun ripple softly across the water, and a gentle breeze kisses the waves. Everything seems calm up here, familiar. But beneath this serene surface lies a world that few humans have ever seen. A vast hidden universe that begins just a few meters down and stretches thousands of meters into cold, inky darkness. As we begin our descent, the colors start to fade. Red disappears first, then orange, and soon even yellow turns to muted greenish hues. The light becomes bluer, then dimmer, until finally it vanishes altogether. You feel the pressure build, not just metaphorically, but physically, pressing gently against your ears, your chest, as if the water itself is beginning to embrace you more tightly. Every 10 meters you sink, the pressure increases by 1 full atmosphere. That's like adding the weight of the entire sky over your head for every step down an escalator. At the surface, you're under 1 atmosphere of pressure, the same as you're walking around on land. But at 100 meters, the pressure is already multiplied tenfold. At 1,000 meters, a kilometer below the surface, the weight is immense, as if you were carrying 1,000 atmospheres of invisible force on your body. And yet, there is life here. Calm, quiet, undisturbed life. The descent continues. You pass the last flickers of light, not from the sun but from glowing jellyfish and mysterious flashes of bioluminescence. Soft, cool lights drifting in the dark. These organisms don't need sunlight. They make their own. Above you, the world of people, clouds, and birds feels impossibly distant. Below you, the ocean becomes something else entirely. Not just water, but a slow-moving cathedral of silence and depth. The water grows colder. The stillness deepens. You begin to feel that time itself slows down here. There is no rush, no urgency, only patience. This is a world where creatures wait motionless for hours, even days, for a single meal. A world where evolution has favored those who do not resist pressure, but blend into it. Creatures that seem almost formless, drifting with no bones, no air pockets, nothing the pressure could crush. Their secret is not resistance, but surrender, letting the pressure become a part of them. As we drift deeper still, a gentle hum begins to fill the silence. Not a sound exactly, but the awareness of vastness. The weight of millions of gallons of water overhead, pressing downward with the kind of quiet strength that reshapes metal and stone. And yet, this world is not hostile. It simply is. The deep sea doesn't crush out of cruelty. It compresses because that is its nature. And in turn, the creatures that call it home survive not in spite of this, but because they have been shaped by it. The ocean does not rush to reveal its mysteries. It unfolds them slowly, as if waiting to see if you're patient enough to truly look. And so, in this quiet descent, we begin to understand not just the science of pressure, but the poetry of it. How immense force and utter stillness coexist in the deepest parts of our planet. This is only the beginning of our journey, but already the deep sea is teaching us something profound. That survival here is not about strength or speed, but harmony with forces we cannot see. So let us continue drifting downward, ever deeper, into this dreamlike blue abyss, where every meter brings a new wonder and where life finds a way in the most unexpected forms. Pressure. It's a word we often use to describe stress or urgency. But in the ocean, pressure is not emotional, it's physical, ever-present and quietly immense. To understand how fish survive in the deep sea, we must first understand what this pressure actually is. At sea level, we live under the weight of the entire atmosphere, a column of air that stretches up into space. We don't feel it because our bodies are perfectly adapted to it. But the moment we enter water, something changes. Water is far denser than air, and it stacks upon itself like a mountain of invisible weight. With every 10 meters, about 33 feet, we dive deeper, we add another atmosphere of pressure. By the time you reach just 100 meters, the pressure has already increased tenfold. Go down 1,000 meters, and you're under more than 100 times the pressure you feel right now. This increase is not linear in sensation, but exponential in force. Think of it like carrying increasingly heavy blankets. The first one is nothing, but keep adding them, and eventually the weight becomes suffocating, unless you're built for it. But what causes this pressure? It's simply the weight of all the water above you pulled down by gravity. Every droplet above you exerts a tiny force, and as those droplets pile higher and higher, that force compounds. And since water cannot be compressed the way air can, it transfers that force directly and evenly across every surface of your body. Pressure in the deep sea doesn't just press from above, it presses from every direction. Your front, your back, your sides, your insides. At a depth of 11,000 meters in the Mariana Trench, the pressure reaches over 1,000 atmospheres, more than 16,000 pounds per square inch. That's enough to crush a human body in an instant if it weren't protected. It's enough to collapse the hulls of submarines and shatter glass as if it were paper. And yet, down there in that cold darkness, life still exists. It's important to remember that pressure isn't inherently violent. It doesn't smash and destroy unless something resists it in the wrong way. Instead, it quietly envelopes everything, a steady, consistent embrace that deep sea life has adapted to over millions of years. What makes pressure dangerous to us is our internal air pockets, our lungs, our sinuses, our ears. They all contain air that can be squeezed, deformed, or ruptured as the pressure builds. That's why human divers can't go very deep without specialized equipment. If they descend too far without adjusting, the air in their lungs compresses, and the nitrogen in their blood can form dangerous bubbles. This is called decompression sickness, or more familiarly, the bends. Our biology is simply not made for the depths. We're surface creatures, adapted to the gentle equilibrium of land and air. But the ocean is a realm of pressure. Creatures here are not built with hollow spaces and rigid bones. They're soft, flexible, and fluid, so the pressure does not break them. It becomes part of them. The internal chemistry of deep-sea organisms is balanced precisely with the external environment. There's no struggle, no fight. The pressure on the outside equals the pressure on the inside. Harmony. It's a concept that challenges the way we think about survival. We often think of surviving as pushing back, as overcoming. But in the deep sea, survival means yielding, flowing, becoming. A fish here doesn't try to withstand the pressure. It has evolved to exist within it so seamlessly that the pressure might as well not exist at all. Even machines struggle where these animals thrive. Submarines must be engineered with incredibly thick titanium walls and reinforced windows. Every dive into the deep is a technological miracle, but fish make that journey every moment of their lives without armor, without resistance, without effort. Scientists measure pressure in a few different ways, in atmospheres, in pascals, or even in pounds per square inch. But for the creatures of the abyss, these numbers are meaningless. What matters is not the quantity of pressure, but the constancy of it. Down here, pressure is not a threat. It is a background hum, like gravity, like time. It simply is. As we float deeper into this mysterious world, we begin to see pressure not as something to fear, but as a fundamental part of existence. It shapes the ocean, it shapes the life within it, and in its own way, it shapes us, as we begin to understand the quiet strength required not to resist, but to belong. As we continue our gentle descent into the deep, the ocean begins to change in ways both subtle and profound. What was once a bright, sunlit world teeming with familiar life becomes something cooler, darker, quieter. A world that seems to drift slowly outside the boundaries of time. The surface now feels impossibly far away, like a distant memory. We have entered the twilight zone. Also known as the mesopelagic zone, this mysterious region begins around 200 meters beneath the surface and stretches down to roughly 1,000 meters. Here, the sunlight can no longer fully penetrate. What little light remains is dim and scattered, creating a dusky blue-grey realm where shadows rule, and colour fades to near monotone. It is neither fully day nor night, a kind of eternal evening suspended between worlds. In this twilight zone, we start to meet creatures that seem born from dreams or ancient myths. Lanternfish with shimmering bellies, hatchetfish with mirror-like sides, and tiny squid that flash brilliant pulses of light, not to see, but to communicate, to confuse predators, or to lure unsuspecting prey. These are beings shaped by darkness, sculpted by silence. The pressure too continues to rise. At the top of the twilight zone we're under about 20 atmospheres. By the time we reach the bottom, we've multiplied that by 5. The human body would already be in serious danger here. Lungs crushed, sinuses imploding, blood chemistry disturbed beyond function. But the animals here, delicate yet resilient, glide through this pressure as if it were nothing more than wind. This zone is filled with life, but life that plays by different rules. Most of these creatures are small, and many of them are migratory. Every night they ascend closer to the surface under the cover of darkness to feed. And every morning they retreat back into the deep, escaping the eyes of predators. This daily vertical migration, performed by billions of organisms, is the largest animal movement on Earth, and most people have never even heard of it. It's a silent symphony of survival that unfolds every day and every night, hidden beneath the waves. As we descend farther, we pass into the midnight zone, the bathypelagic layer, beginning at around 1,000 meters. Down here, sunlight has vanished entirely. There is no hint of day. It is a world of absolute darkness, where the only light comes from within. Bioluminescence becomes the language of the deep. Soft glows, flashes and sparkles, flickering like stars in a black sky. Some creatures use it to camouflage, others to lure mates or prey, and some to signal warnings. It is light not for seeing, but for surviving. The pressure here is immense, over 100 atmospheres and climbing. The temperature has dropped to just a few degrees above freezing. The water is still, heavy, and filled with fine particles that drift like dust in a forgotten attic. And yet, life persists. Strange, beautiful, sometimes terrifying life. Here you might find the anglerfish, with her dangling lure of glowing flesh that tempts fish too curious to survive. Or the gulper eel, with a mouth so large it can swallow prey bigger than itself. Or the vampire squid, whose name belies its peaceful nature. It doesn't even hunt, but simply drifts and collects detritus in its outstretched arms. Everything in this zone has been shaped by scarcity. There is little food, no light, and no escape. So the creatures here have evolved to conserve energy, to grow slowly, to strike only when the odds are in their favour. Many have large eyes to catch even the faintest shimmer. Others are blind entirely, guided by vibrations and chemical cues. Some glow, some are transparent, some are covered in black velvet skin that absorbs nearly all light, rendering them nearly invisible in the darkness. And through it all, the pressure never relents. It is ever present, pushing against every surface, infiltrating every cell. But for the creatures here, it is not an enemy. It is simply the shape of their world, as normal to them as gravity is to us. What's most humbling is that this vast alien realm, the twilight and midnight zones, makes up the majority of our planet's living space. If you were to gather all the habitable environments on Earth, most of it would be here in the cold and crushing depths. We walk on land, bask in the sun, and imagine ourselves masters of the Earth, yet we exist in only the thinnest sliver of what life has to offer. As we continue drifting downward, through this silent darkness, the noise of the world above begins to fade. The distractions, the worries, the endless movement of modern life, all of it slips away. Down here, life is slow, patient, and deeply adapted. It asks us not to conquer, but to listen, not to resist, but to wonder. And in that stillness, we come to understand something simple but profound. The deeper we go, the quieter things become, and the more life begins to whisper its most ancient truths. Beneath the crushing darkness of the deep sea, where sunlight cannot reach and temperatures hover just above freezing, there exists a realm of astonishing creatures, beings so unlike anything found on land or even in the sunlit oceans above that they often feel more like science fiction than science fact. These are the deep-sea fish, the quiet survivors of pressure and darkness, whose very bodies seem to defy what we think life needs to endure. At these depths, pressure is not a distant concept. It is the very shape of reality. Every square inch of a fish's body is subjected to hundreds, sometimes thousands, of atmospheres of pressure. That would instantly crush a human body. It would implode a glass jar. It would warp even hardened metal. Yet deep-sea fish move gracefully, effortlessly, as if pressure simply doesn't exist. Their secret: they do not resist pressure. They have been designed over millions of years to be one with it. One of the most striking characteristics of deep-sea fish is their lack of rigid structures. Many of them have no bones at all, or only soft cartilage-like frameworks that are far more flexible than those of land animals. Some possess skulls that are not fully hardened, allowing the entire head to slightly deform under stress without causing damage. The flesh of these fish often has a jelly-like consistency. Instead of fighting the pressure, they yield to it, letting the deep shape them like clay. Their organs, too, are radically different. Shallow water fish often use a swim bladder, a gas-filled sac, to regulate buoyancy. But in the deep sea, that would be catastrophic. The deeper you go, the more pressure compresses gas. A traditional swim bladder would shrink or collapse entirely, making it impossible for a fish to maintain control over its depth. As a result, many deep-sea fish have either lost this organ entirely or replaced it with oil-filled sacs or specialized tissues that resist compression. Their bodies are perfectly weighted to float in the water column, suspended like ghosts in an eternal dream. And then there is their skin. Often soft, translucent, or velvet black, it serves as both camouflage and protection. In some species, the skin is covered in light-absorbing pigments that allow them to vanish in the darkness. In others, it is nearly invisible, helping them disappear in the faint glow of bioluminescent flashes. Some deep-sea fish, like the dragonfish, can even produce red light, an incredibly rare ability in the ocean's depths, where red wavelengths do not naturally occur. This gives them a kind of private flashlight, invisible to most other species, allowing them to spot prey without revealing themselves. Their eyes are equally adapted to the abyss. Some fish have enormous eyes with mirrors instead of lenses, capable of capturing even the weakest traces of light. Others have lost their eyes completely, relying instead on their sensitivity to vibrations, chemical cues, and electric fields. Down here, vision is no longer the dominant sense. Touch, smell, and intuition take its place. The metabolism of these creatures is another quiet miracle. In a world where food is scarce and energy conservation is key, deep-sea fish often move slowly and deliberately. Their muscle tissue is different, less dense, more pliant, and their bodies run on the bare minimum of fuel. Meals are rare, sometimes occurring only once every few weeks or even months. When food does appear, these fish are ready. Many have enormous mouths, highly elastic stomachs, and jaws that can unhinge to swallow prey larger than themselves. The gulper eel, for instance, can distend its body like a balloon to engulf its target. The black swallower can consume prey twice its length. Down here you take what you can get, and evolution has ensured that no opportunity goes to waste. Even reproduction in the deep sea tells a story of adaptation. Some species have bioluminescent lures to attract mates in the darkness. Others use chemical signals to find each other across vast distances. The famous anglerfish takes this to a strange and haunting level. In some species, the tiny male physically fuses with the larger female, his body dissolving until only his reproductive organs remain, permanently attached to his mate. It is a bizarre, beautiful solution to the problem of loneliness in the vast, empty dark. One of the most fragile yet fascinating examples is the Mariana snailfish, the deepest living fish ever discovered, found nearly 8,000 meters below the surface. It looks delicate, almost translucent, with no scales and a body so soft it would melt under its own weight if brought to the surface. But in its home, a world of silence and crushing pressure, it moves with perfect grace, perfectly balanced, perfectly evolved. These creatures are not strange because they are alien. They are strange because they are exactly what the deep sea requires. They are the answers to questions few of us have thought to ask. They do not conquer their environment. They are expressions of it. Every fin, every tooth, every cell has been shaped by pressure, darkness, cold, and time. What they teach us is subtle but profound. Survival is not always about strength. Sometimes it is about yielding, about becoming, about listening so closely to the world around you that your body changes to match it. The deep sea did not ask its fish to resist pressure. It asked them to embody it, and they did, beautifully. As we continue our exploration, deeper still, we do so with a new sense of reverence. Because every creature that lives here is a lesson in harmony, a whisper from nature herself that life, when given enough time, will find a way not just to endure, but to belong, even in the darkest and most unimaginable places. In the peaceful quiet of the deep sea, where the sun's rays have long vanished and pressure rules every square inch, there lies an elegant problem that nature has solved in countless brilliant ways. How does a creature float? How does it move up or down in the water without wasting precious energy? For many fish in shallower waters, this is the job of a special organ called the swim bladder, a gas-filled sac that works much like a balloon, helping the fish control its buoyancy or its ability to rise and sink. But in the crushing depths of the ocean, the swim bladder becomes more of a curse than a gift. Gas does not behave the same way under high pressure. The deeper you go, the more compressed it becomes. At great depths, a swim bladder would collapse into nothing, rendering it useless. Worse still, if a deep-sea fish with a gas-filled organ were to rise too quickly, the gas inside could expand explosively, damaging organs or causing death. For animals that live thousands of meters below the surface, where pressure is hundreds or even thousands of times greater than at sea level, relying on gas is simply too dangerous. So deep-sea fish have evolved an ingenious alternative. Many of them don't have swim bladders at all. Instead, they rely on different methods, more stable, less risky, to achieve neutral buoyancy. That means they don't float upward or sink downward involuntarily. They simply remain suspended in the water, motionless if they choose, drifting without effort in the vast stillness. One of the key adaptations is the use of oils and fats. Unlike gases, these substances are far less compressible. In fact, some fats are slightly less dense than water, which means they naturally provide lift. Some deep-sea fish have livers or specialized tissues filled with waxy oils that help them stay neutrally buoyant. These fat reserves also serve another purpose. In a world where food is rare, energy stored as fat becomes a precious survival resource. Some species, like certain sharks and deep-dwelling rays, use their large oil-rich livers as natural flotation devices. These organs can weigh a significant portion of the animal's body mass and are so efficient that they allow the creature to glide silently through the water with barely a flick of the fin. Others distribute lighter tissues throughout their bodies to reduce overall density, making them more balanced in the water column. But buoyancy isn't just about avoiding sinking. It's also about moving deliberately through a three-dimensional world. In the deep sea, there is no solid surface to push against, no clear up or down. Every movement costs energy, and energy is hard to come by. So deep-sea fish tend to minimize movement as much as possible. They don't chase their food in bursts of speed. They hover, they wait, they drift gently, conserving every calorie. Their bodies are often elongated, their fins wide and soft, allowing them to make fine, precise adjustments with very little effort. Even their muscles are different. In the high-pressure zones of the deep, fish typically have less dense muscle tissue, which reduces their weight and makes floating easier. These muscles are not built for bursts of speed, but for endurance and gentle control, enough to nudge them upward or downward in slow, graceful spirals. Interestingly, scientists have discovered that in some cases deep-sea creatures possess body compositions that are nearly identical in density to seawater. This allows them to become almost weightless in their environment. They don't float upward like balloons, nor do they sink like stones. Instead, they hover in place, a quiet miracle of equilibrium. In this realm, everything is measured and precise. Too much lift and you rise into unfamiliar territory. Too little and you sink into the crushing unknown. But in the sweet spot, where pressure and lift are balanced, you find the quiet heart of deep-sea life, a zone of stability where creatures have no need to struggle, where movement becomes optional and existence feels effortless. One of the most ethereal examples is the pelican eel. With its strange, elongated body and balloon-like jaw, it floats through the abyss with slow, hypnotic undulations, carried more by the weightless design of its body than by the effort of its muscles. It is not built to race or fight. It is built to float, to wait, to listen. Another is the blobfish, often misunderstood and misrepresented in photos taken at the surface, where its soft body collapses under lower pressure. But in its natural habitat, deep beneath the waves, it is perfectly formed. Its gelatinous flesh is slightly less dense than water, giving it natural buoyancy without any need for gas. It hovers above the seafloor with minimal effort, like a phantom shaped by patience. The adaptations that allow for buoyancy without air teach us something profound about evolution. These creatures did not evolve to dominate their environment, to fight it, or overcome it. Instead, they evolved to live in perfect harmony with it, to adapt so deeply that the challenge disappears. What once seemed like a threat, the loss of a swim bladder, the inability to regulate buoyancy through gas, became an invitation for innovation. And perhaps there is a quiet lesson in that. In our own lives, we often seek to overcome problems by pushing harder, by using more force, more pressure. But sometimes the answer lies in surrendering to the environment, in becoming so in tune with it that struggle becomes unnecessary. Like the deep-sea fish, we can learn to float, to let go of the need for control, and to trust that adaptation will carry us exactly where we need to be. In the dark and pressure-filled quiet of the deep, buoyancy is not a battle, it is a balance. And in that balance, life drifts forward, slow, graceful, and deeply wise. Down here, in the hushed twilight of the deep ocean, there's no rush, no tides crashing, no storms stirring the surface, just a still, dark, pressure-filled realm where life has learned not to resist, but to yield. And perhaps the most elegant adaptation to this slow-motion world is the soft, squishy body, a body designed not to stand against pressure, but to melt into it. Unlike the firm, muscular fish of coral reefs or the rigid, armour-plated creatures of shallow tide pools, many deep-sea fish are quite literally floppy. Their bodies lack rigidity. Their flesh often has the consistency of jelly or loose gelatin. To our eyes, used to the solid forms of terrestrial life, these creatures might seem fragile, even unfinished. But their soft, amorphous bodies are among the most sophisticated survival tools ever sculpted by evolution. Imagine being thousands of meters beneath the surface, surrounded by a crushing wall of water on all sides. At these depths, pressure increases to hundreds or even thousands of times what we experience on land. Any rigid structure that contains air, even a tiny pocket, becomes a liability. It can collapse or rupture. It creates imbalance. Bones, cartilage, and hard exoskeletons, useful on land or in shallower seas, become brittle and dangerous under these conditions. Instead, softness becomes a form of strength. A soft body has nothing to resist the pressure. There's no hollow chamber to implode, no stiff barrier to crack. Instead, every part of the organism yields, flows, and gently shifts to match the changing force around it. This is how life survives where machines often fail. Submersibles must be built from titanium or other high-grade metals, designed to withstand enormous pressure. But the deep-sea snailfish, for example, drifts gracefully at depths that would crumple a submarine, with a body that is almost completely devoid of bone and structure. It is delicate, and yet in its own way, invincible. Many of these fish have minimal skeletal systems. Their bones are reduced, light and flexible. Their skulls are often made of cartilage or soft bone that can slightly compress and shift without breaking. Their muscles are not meant for bursts of speed but for gentle propulsion, subtle flicks of the tail, undulating motions of the body, like a ribbon being carried by a deep current. This softness is not a weakness. It is a symbiotic relationship with the environment. These animals are not trying to fight the deep. They are trying to match it, molecule for molecule, pressure for pressure. The internal pressure within their bodies balances the external pressure perfectly, creating a sense of equilibrium that would be impossible for a rigid creature. It's as if they are not just in the ocean, but part of it, not guests, but elements of its vast design. Even their skin reflects this adaptation. In many cases it is thin, loose, and free of scales. Some species have skin that is nearly transparent, revealing the outlines of organs beneath. Others have velvet black skin, so light absorbent that they vanish into the darkness. There's no need for armour. Their survival depends not on hiding behind a shell, but on blending into the fluid dynamics of the sea itself. And then there are their faces, sometimes stretched, sometimes collapsed, with large watery eyes or no eyes at all. These features can look strange or even unsettling to us, especially when brought to the surface where the lack of pressure causes their bodies to puff, sag, or explode. That famous image of the blobfish, with its drooping nose and jelly-like body, is actually a distortion caused by decompression. In its natural habitat, the blobfish is streamlined, balanced, and perfectly adapted, a masterclass in pressure-sensitive design. These squishy creatures don't need to be fast, they don't need to be strong. They exist in an environment where movement is rare, where energy is precious, and where stealth and patience mean more than brute force. Many of them hover just above the seafloor, waiting for small particles of food to drift by. Others float in the open water column, slowly waving their fins to stay suspended. Their softness allows them to move with the gentlest of gestures, like ghosts moving through a liquid world. Even their internal organs have adapted. Instead of gas-filled lungs or stiff-walled hearts, many deep-sea fish have organs that are flexible, compressible, and low energy. Their hearts beat slowly. Their digestive systems function at reduced speeds. Their brains may be small, but their sensory organs, tuned to feel the faintest movement, the tiniest change in pressure or chemical signal, are highly refined. They don't need fast thinking, they need awareness. Softness also plays a role in reproduction. Some deep-sea fish release egg sacs that float slowly through the water, protected by gelatinous coatings. Others have fragile ribbon-like mating structures that gently connect in the darkness. Everything is delicate, precise, and patient. There is no rush to multiply. In the deep, time itself seems to stretch and soften. We live in a world that often praises hardness, sharpness, and strength. But in the deep sea, the rules are different. Here, softness is power. It is not the softness of weakness, but the softness of adaptability. These creatures have surrendered to their environment not as a form of defeat, but as a profound kind of wisdom. By becoming soft, they have become untouchable, unbreakable, part of something greater than themselves. And so, as we float through this slow and shadowy world, watching these strange and beautiful beings move with the elegance of a lullaby, we might begin to understand the truth they offer us. That survival, in its highest form, is not about building walls or bracing for impact. It is about yielding, about flowing, about becoming so in tune with your surroundings that you're no longer separate from them. In the crushing silence of the abyss, softness reigns, and in that softness life endures, gently, quietly, forever. As we sink even deeper into the ocean's dark and pressurized embrace, we discover one of nature's most brilliant secrets, a principle so simple and yet so profound, it quietly underpins the survival of nearly every creature in the deep. That secret is water itself. It may seem obvious. Of course, fish are made mostly of water, but in the deep sea, this trait becomes much more than a coincidence of biology. It becomes a strategy, a silent adaptation, a perfect match between life and environment. The very thing that threatens to crush any intruder, the weight of the water above, becomes completely harmless when the creature being pressed is made of the same substance. Water, unlike gases, is nearly incompressible. It holds its shape under pressure. It transfers force evenly in every direction. And when an animal's internal tissues are mostly composed of water, that same property protects it, not through resistance, but through alignment. There is nothing for the pressure to crush. There are no air pockets to implode, no hard shells to crack. The internal environment matches the external one so precisely that pressure passes through the body like wind through an open window. Imagine two worlds, one inside the fish and one outside. In the deep sea, those worlds must become one. There can be no difference between them, no imbalance, and water, as it so often does, offers the perfect bridge between opposites. It flows, it adapts, it equalizes. So when a deep-sea creature is made mostly of water, it becomes invisible to pressure. The crushing weight of the ocean, which would destroy human lungs or crumple a submarine, passes through the body without harm, without resistance, without even notice. This watery composition also allows for flexibility. Deep-sea fish don't have the tight, muscular bodies of surface dwellers. Their tissues are loose, hydrated, and pliant, able to shift and flex under stress. Some are so soft that they would collapse into an unrecognizable mass if brought to the surface. Their watery structure only works at depth, where pressure holds everything gently in place. Remove the pressure, and their bodies lose cohesion. They appear misshapen or even melted, but in their natural habitat they are beautifully formed, buoyant, symmetrical, and graceful. Water also helps regulate temperature. Down in the abyss, where sunlight never reaches and the water is just above freezing, life moves slowly. But because water has a high specific heat capacity, meaning it resists rapid temperature changes, it helps these creatures maintain a stable internal environment. Sudden fluctuations are rare, and deep-sea animals have evolved to take full advantage of this thermal consistency. Their internal chemistry is balanced, their cellular processes slow but reliable, and their metabolic rhythms steady and efficient. Moreover, being composed primarily of water allows for another important benefit: the transmission of pressure signals. Deep-sea creatures rely heavily on non-visual cues to sense their surroundings. Vibrations, changes in flow, and subtle pressure shifts carry crucial information. Water-based tissues are perfect conductors of these signals, acting like a liquid radar system. The fish doesn't just live in the water, it feels through the water. Its entire body becomes a sensory organ, tuned to the smallest ripple, the faintest shift. This is particularly vital in a world where sight is limited or absent. Many deep-sea fish have evolved lateral lines, thin, sensitive structures that run along the sides of their bodies, detecting vibrations and pressure gradients in the water. These lines are filled with water-based cells and gel-filled canals that communicate even the gentlest movement. Whether a predator is gliding nearby, or a tiny morsel of food is drifting in the current, the watery body responds like a liquid antenna, transmitting information instantly and silently. There's also a poetic symmetry to this. These creatures are shaped by water, filled with water, and surrounded by water. They live in a state of perfect equilibrium. They don't disturb their environment. They become indistinguishable from it. It's a level of harmony that is difficult to imagine from our human perspective. We're always fighting to maintain balance, protecting ourselves from heat, cold, dryness, and pressure. But in the deep sea, balance is not something to fight for. It's something you surrender to. And perhaps the most astonishing thing is how this watery design supports life at such extreme depths. In the Hadal zone, below 6,000 meters, the pressure is over 600 times greater than at the surface. That's the equivalent of having 50 jumbo jets stacked on your head. Yet life persists. Snailfish, amphipods, and other mysterious creatures move calmly through this invisible weight, utterly unaffected. Their watery bodies don't resist the pressure. They are the pressure. There is no boundary between their internal world and the crushing deep. There is only flow. Even on the cellular level, water plays a crucial role. The cells of deep-sea creatures often have unique membranes that retain flexibility and function in extreme conditions. Water inside these cells helps maintain the shape and activity of proteins, enzymes, and organelles, ensuring that even under immense stress, life continues. Some fish even have special molecules, osmolytes, that stabilize their proteins in high-pressure environments. But without water as the universal solvent and medium for life, none of this would be possible. Water, then, is more than a backdrop. It is the central character, the medium through which all life flows and evolves, the gentle force that cradles deep-sea fish and allows them to exist in a world of extremes. And perhaps it reminds us of something deeper, that softness, fluidity, and alignment with our surroundings can sometimes offer more protection than strength or resistance. In a place where pressure should crush everything into silence, water whispers a different message. Not everything needs to fight. Some things survive by becoming what they live in, and in doing so, they find a kind of peace that is impossible to break. In the deep sea, where sunlight never shines and pressure rises to mind-bending levels, life doesn't just endure, it thrives. But for this to happen, adaptation must go far beyond the shape of a fish's body or the texture of its skin. The transformation reaches down to the very heart of what keeps an organism alive, the microscopic machinery inside its cells. Here, in the invisible world of biochemistry, lies one of the most extraordinary feats of evolution, the ability of deep-sea fish to keep their enzymes functioning under crushing pressure. Enzymes are the biological engines that drive every reaction in the body. They help break down food, build proteins, transport oxygen, and regulate the flow of life itself. Without enzymes, a fish could not digest its meals, repair its tissues, or even think and move. These molecules are incredibly sensitive to their environment. A small change in temperature, pressure, or acidity can cause them to fold incorrectly, stop working, or break apart entirely, and that's where the deep sea presents its greatest biochemical challenge. At thousands of meters below the surface, the pressure is so high that it can physically distort the structure of enzymes. It can squeeze them until they no longer fit their target molecules, causing essential reactions to slow down or stop. At the same time, the water is nearly freezing, usually just above 0 degrees Celsius, which further reduces the speed of chemical reactions. For surface-dwelling organisms, these conditions would mean certain death. Their enzymes would seize up, their metabolism would collapse, and life would come to a halt. But the fish of the deep have evolved a set of quiet miracles at the molecular level. Their enzymes aren't like ours. They are designed, not by human hands, but by countless generations of evolutionary refinement, to stay flexible and active in the most extreme conditions on Earth. One way this is achieved is by altering the amino acid sequences that make up these enzymes. Just as a lock must be shaped precisely to fit a key, an enzyme must be folded in a specific way to work. In deep-sea fish, the structure of these molecules is slightly looser, more elastic, allowing them to flex and shift under pressure without breaking. This subtle change means that even when the ocean presses in from all directions, their enzymes continue to operate slowly, carefully, but effectively. Another adaptation lies in the use of special molecules known as piezolites. These are small, pressure-resistant compounds that exist within the cells of deep-sea organisms. They act as molecular cushions, protecting sensitive proteins and enzymes from being crushed or warped by pressure. One of the most well-known of these piezolites is trimethylamine N-oxide, or TMAO. In higher concentrations, TMAO helps stabilize proteins and prevents them from unfolding under stress. In fact, the deeper a fish lives, the more TMAO it tends to have in its tissues, a natural internal barometer for life under pressure. But there is a trade-off. While TMAO is helpful at stabilizing proteins, it also increases the saltiness of the fish's internal fluids, which can create other problems for maintaining cellular function. So the organism must strike a delicate balance, producing just enough to protect itself without disrupting other systems. This fine-tuned chemistry is a testament to the astonishing precision of life in the abyss. a harmony between biochemistry and environment so complete that even a single molecule can make the difference between survival and collapse. Inside the mitochondria, the power plants of the cell, adaptations are just as elegant. These tiny organelles generate the energy that cells need to survive. In deep-sea fish, their structure and function have been modified to handle lower temperatures and higher pressure. The membranes surrounding them are more fluid, allowing for better transport of ions and molecules. The enzymes inside the mitochondria have evolved to continue functioning efficiently, even when the pressure threatens to slow everything to a crawl. Energy conservation is also essential. Deep-sea fish don't waste a single molecule of fuel. Their enzymes work at just the right pace, matching their slow lifestyle and the scarcity of food. Metabolism slows, but it never stops. There is no panic, no rush, only precision, patience, and quiet efficiency. Even DNA, the blueprint of life, is affected by pressure. In extreme conditions, the double helix can become slightly altered, and the machinery that reads and copies genetic information must adapt as well. In deep-sea fish, the enzymes that transcribe DNA into RNA and those that translate RNA into proteins are also specialized. They must recognize the same genetic codes found in all life, but do so under conditions that would stall or distort these processes in any other creature. What makes all this even more remarkable is that these adaptations are invisible to the naked eye. A deep-sea fish might look strange or even comical at first glance, but the most important survival features are hidden inside each cell, in every drop of blood, in every strand of DNA. Evolution has written a biochemical language of resilience, one molecule at a time. These molecular adaptations also offer tantalizing clues for science and medicine. By studying how enzymes work under pressure, researchers hope to learn how to preserve organs for transplants, design better pharmaceuticals, or create new industrial enzymes that can function in extreme environments, from the icy depths of the ocean to the heated chambers of machines. But beyond the science, there is something deeply poetic about all of this. In a place where no sunlight penetrates, where the weight of the world bears down with unimaginable force, life has not only endured, it has become quietly sophisticated. It has found a way to keep the spark of metabolism alive, to turn food into energy, to build and repair, to think and feel, all under conditions that we once thought were uninhabitable. The deep sea reminds us that life is not easily extinguished. It adapts, it listens to its environment, it rewrites its rules at the molecular level, not through brute force, but through gentle persistence and infinite patience. In the enzymes of deep-sea fish, we see not just survival, but transformation. The quiet miracle of life humming along in perfect silence, thousands of meters beneath the surface of the sea. The ocean floor is a world of paradoxes, a place of profound silence and sudden violence, of scarcity and abundance, of stillness and the slow ancient dance of life. It is one of the most mysterious and least understood places on Earth, and yet, despite its remoteness, it teems with life. Here, in the perpetual blackness just above the seabed, we find creatures that not only survive under unthinkable pressure and cold, but have made this extreme world their home. This region, known as the Abyssal Plain, and in even deeper areas the Hadal Zone, lies anywhere from 4,000 to over 11,000 meters below the surface. At these depths, the pressure can exceed 1,100 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. It's enough to crumple steel, and yet here, fish glide slowly across the seafloor, among brittle stars, strange crustaceans and forests of tube worms that seem to grow in slow motion over millennia. The fish that dwell here are among the most alien-looking creatures on our planet. Their forms are shaped not by aesthetic or by speed, but by necessity. They have adapted to a world with no light, No sound but the occasional creak of the Earth's shifting crust, and no predictable source of food. In many ways, their existence is a study in patience, resilience, and balance. One of the most iconic deep-sea dwellers is the anglerfish. This eerie predator is instantly recognizable by the glowing lure that dangles from its forehead like a fishing rod, a specialized appendage known as nesca. It glows with bioluminescent bacteria, casting a soft, ghostly light in the blackness. The anglerfish waves this lure gently, mimicking the movements of prey. In a place where light is precious and rare, even a faint glow can attract curious or hungry creatures, and when they come close, the anglerfish strikes with lightning speed, swallowing its victim whole in a gaping maw lined with needle-sharp teeth. Many anglerfish possess stomachs that can expand dramatically, allowing them to devour prey larger than themselves, a necessary adaptation in a world where meals may come only once every few weeks. Their bodies are soft and compressible, perfectly adapted to the crushing weight of the ocean above. They're not designed for speed or elegance, but for efficiency, the art of survival in the absence of abundance. Another deep-sea marvel is the snailfish, particularly the Mariana snailfish, which holds the record as the deepest living fish ever discovered. Found nearly 8,000 meters beneath the surface in the Mariana Trench, these ghostly white creatures drift just above the sediment, their bodies so soft and gelatinous they would fall apart if brought to the surface. They feed on small crustaceans and marine invertebrates, locating them by touch or vibration, sensing the slightest movement in the water through their finely tuned lateral lines. These fish are not solitary survivors. They are part of a broader community of deep-sea organisms that have carved out niches in the most inhospitable environment on Earth. Around hydrothermal vents and cold seeps, life takes on entirely new forms. Here, the Earth's crust leaks heat and chemicals, creating localized oases of warmth and nutrients. These vents are ringed with creatures that rely not on sunlight, but on chemosynthesis, a process by which bacteria convert toxic chemicals like hydrogen sulfide into energy. Large tube worms, clams, and vent shrimp live in harmony with these bacteria, forming bizarre ecosystems where no plant grows and no sunlight has ever touched. Fish living near these vents have developed unique adaptations, from specialized gill structures to the ability to metabolize poisonous compounds, that allow them to live where no other vertebrates can. These vent communities are temporary, forming and collapsing over years or decades, but while they last, they support an explosion of life in the deepest reaches of the sea. Even away from vents in the vast empty plains of the seafloor, life persists. Some fish have evolved to walk on the seabed using modified fins, like the tripod fish, which balances on 3 long spines and waits motionless for food to pass by in the current. Others, like rat-tail fish, glide slowly just above the sediment, using their long tapering tails for balance and their sensitive snouts to probe for worms or small crustaceans buried beneath the surface. There is something deeply meditative about these fish. They do not rush, they do not chase, they drift, hover, wait. Their lives unfold in slow, deliberate rhythms that match the stillness of their world. Their hearts beat slowly, their bodies grow slowly, they age slowly, with some species possibly living for decades or more in the silence of the deep. Despite the extreme conditions, reproduction still occurs. Some species lay eggs that are neutrally buoyant, floating in the cold water until they hatch. Others may practice broadcast spawning, releasing clouds of eggs and sperm into the current to meet by chance. And a few, like certain deep-sea anglerfish, engage in truly bizarre reproductive strategies. In some species, the male is a tiny parasitic creature that fuses with the female, sharing her bloodstream and becoming nothing more than an attached reproductive organ. In the darkness, where finding a mate is nearly impossible, evolution has taken dramatic steps to ensure the continuation of life. These fish are not just survivors, they are reminders of nature's boundless creativity. They teach us that life will find a way, even in the coldest, darkest, most forbidding corners of our planet, and they challenge our assumptions about what life needs to thrive. No light, no problem. Crushing pressure, adapt. Scarce food, evolve to wait. The ocean floor is a world that moves slowly, speaks softly, and hides its miracles well. But when we take the time to observe it, patiently without judgment, we begin to see that this realm is not lifeless. It is full of quiet wonders, shaped not by resistance but by acceptance, not by dominance but by harmony. In the flicker of a bioluminescent glow, in the delicate wave of a fin, in the slow drift of a translucent body above the silt, we see something extraordinary, the poetry of existence at its most resilient and profound. For all our technological advances, for all our sonar scans and deep-diving submersibles, the truth remains: the deep ocean is still, in many ways, a mystery. We have mapped the surface of Mars in more detail than we have charted the floors of our own seas. The vastness of the deep, with its crushing pressure, frigid temperatures, and eternal darkness, has kept its secrets close. And while we have learned much about how fish survive in this extreme environment, there is still so much we do not know and perhaps may never fully understand. Every descent into the abyss, every expedition that sends a camera or a robotic arm into the trench, reveals something new, a shape no one has seen before, a behaviour that makes no immediate sense, a flicker of movement that defies explanation. Some of these discoveries expand our understanding of biology. Others leave scientists simply speechless. What we know about deep-sea fish is astonishing. But what we don't know may be even more awe-inspiring. Consider the fact that many of the species we've encountered have only been observed once or twice. Some have never been caught, never studied up close, merely filmed for a few brief seconds before vanishing into the black. Others exist only as bones or tissue samples recovered from the gut of something else. We don't know how they mate, how they migrate, how they raise their young, if they do at all. We don't even know how many species are down there. The vast majority of life at depth likely remains undiscovered, unnamed, unseen by human eyes. Even the adaptations we do recognize, the squishy bodies, the flexible enzymes, the absence of air-filled bladders, are not fully understood. Why do some fish glow blue while others emit red light? How do certain species generate light in patterns so precise they could be used for coded communication? Are these flashes just for luring prey, or do they speak a language we haven't yet decoded? We suspect answers, we build hypotheses, but the deep doesn't give up its truths easily. And then there are the mysteries of evolution. How did life get here in the first place? How did creatures so specialized, so perfectly adapted, evolve in regions that seem almost cut off from the rest of Earth's ecosystems? There are theories, yes. Perhaps their ancestors were once shallow water fish who slowly drifted downward over generations. Perhaps tectonic activity created isolated habitats where evolution marched to a different rhythm. But these are theories born of surface logic, and the deep ocean follows its own rules. There are even more profound questions. Some scientists wonder if certain biochemical processes used by deep-sea organisms could resemble those found on other planets. Could Europa, a moon of Jupiter covered in ice but suspected of hiding a subsurface ocean, contain life like this? Could the trench-dwelling fish of Earth resemble extraterrestrial organisms we have not yet discovered? In studying the deep, we may be peering not just into our own world's shadows but into the possibilities of life across the cosmos. and there are practical limitations as well. Sending equipment to these depths is enormously difficult and expensive. Even the best designed submersibles can only stay for a short time. They're bulky, slow, and easily damaged. The deeper we go, the harder it becomes to observe without disturbing. And yet, every time we enter the deep, we inevitably alter it. Lights, noise, vibrations, all these things are foreign to the world of silence and darkness. Our presence ripples outward, changing the behavior of the creatures we seek to understand. We are visitors here, temporary, outsiders, and perhaps that is why the deep remains so silent when we come calling. It does not perform for us. It does not shout its secrets. It whispers, and only the patient hear its voice. There is also the inescapable awareness that time moves differently down here, not in a literal sense, but in a biological one. Many deep-sea fish live long lives. Some grow slowly over decades, perhaps centuries. They take years to mature, years to reproduce, and their rhythms are not calibrated to the frantic pulse of human life. When we observe them for an hour or a day, we are barely scratching the surface of their existence. Their lifetimes unfold like ancient scrolls, and we are seeing only a single word. Even our most basic questions, like how these fish find enough food, often have no simple answer. Marine snow, falling organic debris, the occasional carcass of a whale. These are some of the known food sources. But in such a vast and sparsely populated world, how do predators know where to find prey? How do scavengers locate something as rare and ephemeral as a sunken squid? Are there chemical signals that drift invisibly across the seafloor, pointing the way to a distant meal? Is there a sensory perception we have yet to comprehend? Some scientists speculate that deep-sea creatures may even experience the world in ways we cannot imagine, through electromagnetic fields, subtle temperature gradients, or vibrations so faint they seem impossible. What if their senses, finely tuned through eons of evolution, are simply operating in dimensions beyond our perception? We speak of sight, hearing, touch, but the deep sea may require other forms of awareness entirely. And there is one more mystery that lingers, a philosophical one. Why does the deep exist as it does? Why did nature choose this route? Not to fill the abyss with armoured monsters or gas-pressurized giants, but with creatures of softness, light, and patience. Why is survival here not about brute force, but about becoming the environment itself? Perhaps it's because the deep sea is a mirror, showing us an alternative model of strength. Not the kind forged in steel and motion, but the kind born of stillness, resilience, and quiet adaptation. These fish do not conquer their world, they reflect it. And in doing so, they endure. In the end, we may never know everything about the deep. Its full story may remain hidden in shadow, beyond the reach of even our best machines. But maybe that is not a failure. Maybe it is a gift. Because in a world where so much has been measured, mapped, and explained, the deep ocean remains one of the last great mysteries, a place where wonder still lives, and where the unknown still has room to breathe. So as we finish our gentle descent and drift in the still black waters of the abyss, let us remember, we have touched the edge of something vast and sacred. We have glimpsed the quiet strength of life far below. And we carry that wonder with us now, a reminder that mystery still exists, and that the world is far more beautiful than we ever dared to imagine.